question. Like
Yeah.
networking, I think we've had this conversation before. Networking, for me, and to some extent, what we're talking about here is situating yourself within a job that
See.
allows you to sort of naturally network. And then there's like, networking, going out and doing networking,
See.
looking for places and looking for situations and looking for associations, or you're part of a board, or you're part of like, there's different ways to sort of
Yeah.
like network.
Yeah.
Some of our more long term, some are more short term. What Miguel
Right.
is doing is long term, or he's thinking about the long game. But there's also these short-term scenarios where you just like pop in and everybody's there to do it, or
See.
not everybody's there to do it, but you're there to do it because it's the right space, and it's the right people that you want to sort of engage with.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Can you say a little bit about, because again, you had this experience. You've been doing it. I've never done it. And quite
See.
frankly, I'm really bad at networking, even for my own self,
That's
just
funny.
personally. You know what I'm saying?
Because I've seen you in the wild, Jose, and yeah, you're horrible at it. You're horrible at it.
I can
But
get really awkward really quick, but
I don't know. So two things are happening while you say that. One is I get asked this often, right? About like, well, how is it that you could just talk to people and tell them what you need and just go out there, and that's that whole because I don't feel that it's work, it feels fine for me. Like it doesn't feel like it's an extra chore. So I'm not intimidated by it. It doesn't matter black, blue, yellow, white, whatever. I could still go ahead and talk and have a conversation and weave it into what we both need. But then there's also like this like mysticism of what networking is, right? When you think about like you go to the like little after party and there's somebody having a martini and then you have to pitch them your thing and you give them your card. Like that's super antiquado. Like it doesn't like exist like that anymore. For a long time,
Ah,
that
shit. That's what
version.
I was trying to get into that space.
Yeah, like it
Ah,
doesn't in that version, it doesn't. Now it's kind of more techy, right? Like there's definitely like LinkedIn and all these other platforms that can get you connected and follow people what they're doing, support what they're doing. Um, but I think if you reframe it that most of the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis is networking, is just long term, right? Like most of the stuff that we do is planting the seed for something later, right? And if you see it that way, it won't feel as intimidating as a okay, now I'm on, I gotta perform versus like no, like technically most of the stuff you do is performance based, right? Like you got to make sure that you're not talking smack in front of people. You got to make sure that you're minding your P's and Q's, and because you never know who's kind of quote unquote looking, and then two, who's going to hire you for the next thing, right? So as I was thinking about that, that's kind of my spiel when I talk to either students or kind of colleagues of mine that are like, pues I don't know how to do that. I was like, well, cool, then don't do that. Like it's just going to be more awkward for force yourself to do that. Like, what are you good at doing? No, pues, I mean, I could do like a coffee or I could do a Zoom meeting or so cool, do that, right? Like the more that you do, the more practice the reps you get going so that when the event happens, the conference or whatever it is, then you just kind of smooth it into it. Then your crowd is building into you versus the other way around, you know?
are
And
there
then the
any
last one is
strategies? Yeah,
go
are there
ahead.
any strategies like stand right next to the water fountain or stand
See,
right next
no,
to the
super old
beer
school,
and
man.
somebody's
Super old
gonna
school. Or
talk to
or
you?
like if they have your cards ready, or like you don't even know how many times I don't even have business cards, and I'm like, oh shoot, okay, how do I get in contact with that person again? And I'll just say it like this, like, hey, do you mind if I add you on LinkedIn, or like, do you mind if I follow you? Because then it doesn't feel like as let me have your card or here's my card, right? It feels like it's gonna be a mutual thing down the road. No, but those
interesting.
strategies, it's just kind of going in with a buddy is also good, right? To an event, if you're
Yes.
thinking about that traditional
Say
one.
more. Say more. What do you mean?
So if you go, so like you and I go to an event, right? We're gonna go to a conference, we're gonna go to a speaker workshop, whatever. We're gonna feel a sense of comfort, right? Of like, okay, I have somebody to talk to, this and that. But at that point, at some point, you got to start kind of like pushing yourself out to like, who else in your table can you talk to? Who else in the little water, not water cooler, but in the line to get your drink can you talk to? And it's always about like, hey, this is my who I am. What did you think about this? What we're doing? Cool. Yeah, right. There's no like sales pitch yet, right? It feels a bit more off-putting when you get the whole like resume spiel. You're like, órale, pues, like I'm here to enjoy the workshop, or I'm here to be at the part of the conference. Although it's expected, but it's not like Yeah, it's off-putting on this side, on both ends, because then you got to do like your little spiel, and then you see somebody more famous or more like, oh, let me go over there, and then you're just kind of fishing for it, you know.
Hey,
Hope
although,
that helps.
however, I mean, I remember you saying like if you're like, I mean, you gotta hunt. Like you know,
Gotta
your
hunt.
family's gotta eat, you know, and
Yeah.
you gotta hunt. And so I think that there is you know, to your point, I think también Argelis, like I was surprised that Jose that you would say that because you're probably one of the most outgoing individuals that I know. And I would think that it would come pretty natural, right? And so what I'm trying to do, like reframing leadership, quote unquote, broadly, is even like I heard we had a really powerful first leadership seminar last Friday, and this thought of like networking was off-putting. The word networking
See,
was like can be like I gotta go network, like it's a
see,
chore, it's
see.
transactional.
Yeah.
And what I've been trying to say, and this is right, the most recent right name for the business is we're building relationships with that,
Yep.
and it's non-transactional. So like as an example, Jose, like yesterday, I reached out to this guy. I was gonna text him, but I just called him. He's a young guy. He was appointed to a school board, local school board. And he was like 23, 20. He almost like had no business. He was a substitute teacher, no business being appointed to the school board, but he appointed and nobody wanted it and he got it. And he ran unopposed. Now he's probably, I don't know, in his late 20s. So he's connected to me because at the school where I used to be the assistant principal, and his mom helped us buy a house. So I reached out to him and I'm like, let's have some cafecito. Let's connect. Had a quick 3-5 minute convo. And he's like, let's meet. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm not pitching anything. These are the things I'm involved. I'd love to know more
Yep.
what you're doing and how we can support. Let's just reconnect as it's beginning to open up again. I feel like there's this like opportunity for us. Things are opening up again. The mass mandates are going away. Hey, how comfortable are you to meet in person? And I think we're at this juncture of right. It's a valid touch point to begin out there and build these relationships if that's valid.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I'm thinking about it's when it's, I guess to some extent when it's like a natural free flowing conversation, I'm fine. It's when it has to be transactional, you know, and to some extent that's where I have the problem, or like for me, and I haven't
See.
really practiced it. I haven't really done it, and it's not something I
Yeah.
normally do. And when things come together, they come together organically. And part of the thing that I'm trying to figure out is how to sort of bring your organic self to the
See.
conversation and make these things like you said. And I even like the idea of building relationships as opposed to networking, because networking seems very transactional, and building relationships
Yeah.
just shifts the conversation to, yes, we're trying to, convey a message and we're trying to sort of keep in contact, but it doesn't have to be in these traditional ways, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if being an entrepreneur or a leader is organic. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like
Right.
see, if it were organic, well, everybody would do it. Does that make sense? I think it's something you have to consciously work at and be able to try things and fail and keep going. But so I think that the relationship building, even that is not done right by some people, right? It feels too forced, or it feels like it's a little icky. Especially when it comes from like a male to a female, it feels like there's already some sort of like what's going on, right? Some catch, like why are you being so nice? Like, no, honestly, I really want to support that, and who knows down the road when we can work together on a project or something, right? So there's a lot of layers on top of that. So I'm not sure if it's organic as we think. I think the building relationship for some of us can be really smoother than others, right? But even just say I'm working on this, or I want you to be my trainer or whatever. Even that ask is different, right? Like that's also on their end is also like a practice, right? Like, I saw you do A, B, and C, but I don't know if you could be the guy. Could I talk to you about this? Like, even that's harder for them to do, right?
I even want to say, like, there's different types of networking. There's that networking within equals.
Yeah.
There's networking within like people that are not equal. I mean, obviously, when you're in a position of power, the networking looks different. People are coming to you. You don't have to go to anyone. And so the conversation and the relationship building and the networking. And again,
Yeah.
I haven't had a position where people are coming to me like that, but maybe that's something we can sort of talk about, the difference between, you know, networking within peers, networking within somebody where there's like a relationship difference, where you are in a position of power, or as executive directors, whatever it might be, you know, doctors, there's already a disparity to some extent, despite the fact that, you know, the product or the programs or the conversation we're bringing, you know, might be a complete success. There's always that sort of that sort of, and that changes. The conversation changes, the pitches changes, you know, the relationship, and you know, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
It's a recently, you know, I mean, I think, you know, this piece about relationships, there's an aspect of pride that has gotten in the way of me maintaining relationships. And I'll say with former supervisors, and now it comes time to apply, and you're like, Chinga, who's going to write me a letter of rec? Well, I got one from, like, I got a bunch of them, like everywhere. Like, I got them all, but shit, they're 6 years old or they're 8 years old, and I can all then present them and go, here's the vault, and
Right.
look what it shows, right, across all these positions, but not one that's updated. And then like to call. And so what I would say is that like a friend call, you know, a friend within a week, it was like, hey, God, shit, I'm going to apply to this gig, and can you update the letter of rec? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's the strongest. I think, you know, who do you, and so it like was really clear for me as I was talking to him, I was reflecting on my own practice.
Yeah.
So I think that aspect is just maintaining it, Jose, like, and thinking, I'm going to connect with what Argeli said too. Like, I'm recognizing in this leadership cohort, there are 9 women and 3 men. There are 12 people, 9 women and 3 men. And these women went deep really quickly in session 1, really quick. And I'm like, oh, so right, not like that. I'm like, wow, right, like blown away in how courageous they were.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready because I'm ready for the retreat. And so here's where there's a colleague that you and I know, Jose, that I'm like, I think I'm gonna invite a woman to help facilitate the retiro, to come in, understanding my positionality as a male,
Right.
and to balance that. So here's where at least I'm trying to bridge those two things, that the relationship, right, above and below and mutual, like you're maintaining these relationships because you never know when you need somebody to back you up or be a colleague to collaborate or lift you up, right? Or you're lifting somebody else up. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope that's resonating. I hope that's resonating.
No, that's it. I think that for me hits more home than how many business cards could I get by the end of the event, right? I think that for me hits more natural and safe for me to do that versus, oh, I need to get the manager or I need to get the CEO's number or whatever, because that might be short term if it even happens, right? Because how many of those folks did it happen? At USC, there's tons of these, right? There's tons of these events and go here and go there. And I would, if I had the time or if I was in between classes, I would even show up to stuff that didn't quote unquote belong to me because I recognized there was a leader there or somebody that I wanted to at least hear them out in person. There was a Institute of Schwarzenegger Institute Leadership, something for the MBA over there. I was like, I mean, I've heard this guy speak, whatever, but I wanted to see him do it. So man, it was very interesting how, yeah, first gen, you know, super like talked about all his struggles and threw some jokes here and there, but he was a human, Republican or not, whatever, but he was a human at first, and then he was relatable as hell to everybody. Like he was talking to the board of trustees there, and then he talked to me, and then so he was just like a people's person. Does that make sense? So I think that was an interesting take too. Like how is a person, like going back to your point, Jose, like how is a person who has some sort of stature, some power, kind of bend himself or herself to be able to allow people in, right? Or to allow relationships in, you know? I gave him my card, I didn't expect it to go further than that, but for me, what I learned was that value of like being flexible and mendable in front of such a large and diverse crowd, you know, in power structure, not ethnicity and gender, like a diverse power audience, you know. The Jose, the part you mentioned that it feels harder for you is, or is it so once you meet somebody and you have some sort of mutual goal or project, or is that's the step that's harder for you to do, or where is it that you get kind of a little bit more tímido?
I just haven't done it. I haven't done it.
Okay.
If I'm doing it, it's just being me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And the idea of having, like, I guess the idea of framing it as network versus building relationship is what,
Yeah.
for me, I get stuck on. And like I said, it's not like I haven't done it and I don't do it. I mean, I feel like whenever I come across work that I'm interested in, people that are, you know, inspiring, I definitely sort of connect and we definitely
Yeah.
sort of develop a relationship. But it's not, I don't consider it networking. It's just building relationships. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Like working together and stuff like that. And so, uh, and to some extent, I do it. To some extent, I don't like think. I guess I don't like thinking about it in such a way that makes it feel like, oh, I got a business card, or I, you know, gave out 5 business cards. You know? Because at that point, it becomes transactional to some extent.
See,
You know, it might not be the case that time around a relationship is built, but I do know that if I continue in this space, that it will naturally develop. You know, and for me, that's something that I do in my day-to-day life. You know, like sometimes I don't have to talk to somebody the first time I see them, and I talk to them the second or third time where it becomes more natural, more free-flowing, and it doesn't feel forced or, you know, like, hey, let me stop you, you know,
yeah. Yeah.
so I can like, so you can hear me and we can acknowledge each other. Like, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
it's those sort of situations. So to some extent, like I do it. It's just not something that is as intentional. And, you know, that's not to say that it can't become more intentional. Like, how do I sort of amplify the relationship building so it does become more intentional? It doesn't become so, um, not that I'm passive about it, because when I do find somebody that I want to sort of like work with, I eventually sort of, again, be in the same space
Yeah.
to sort of develop those natural sort of things, and we can sort of like, even the idea of like, how can I help you
Yeah.
before, you know, before what do I need from you,
Yeah.
is also a strategy that I implement. Like, how can I, like what I love what you do, let me sort of like, you know, be the first one to extend my sort of like services, and then we'll see, you know, how you can, if at all, you know, it might be the case that they don't, or they,
Right.
and that's totally fine as well. That has to be part of like, if it's not transactional, then, and it is, you know, building relationship. It's also about like not expecting anything back,
Yeah.
even if you do give, which is a whole different level of something, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that's it though. I think, como dijiste, I think you just do it. You're just not calling it that, right? Or you're not thinking about it in those terms.
But I'm also not trying to feed the family. You know, I'm also not trying to depend it on this sort of like as a source of income. You know what I'm saying? I'm also like, and there's a serious conversation to be had. How
Yeah.
do you sort of like be more proactive about
Yeah.
these conversations and sort of break away, or develop your strength in the areas that you're comfortable with, so it doesn't become something you're not, and you can still sort of push for
See.
more productive conversations, more productive interactions when you're going in there. You know, it almost
See.
reminds me. It's not the same, right? Like when you get rejected by like I don't know, you're asking somebody to dance or something like
Yeah.
that. Like, nah, I'm good. Okay, let me go talk to somebody else. Yeah, okay, good.
And they're still in the
You know what
same
I'm
room
saying?
and you can see them dancing with somebody else.
Yes, right next to them.
But
Like, oh, you heard,
right next
like,
to
oh, you
them.
don't want to dance? Do you want to dance?
That's funny. No, but